The Dave Portnoy Barstool F the Jews situation is crazy, has sparked mass outrage, but also divided the internet for a few different reasons. Senator Chris Murphy joins the show to talk about why and how he's going after Trump right now.
This is, as I said, probably the most massive corruption of the White House in the history of the country.
The Newark airport meltdown was actually worse than we knew, and then a good light news story to help keep you sane. We're talking about all that and much more on today's brand new Phillip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, how it's being covered, and how people are reacting to it, starting with this. This Dave Portnoy F the Jews situation is crazy. So this whole situation, it starts at Barstool Sansom Street in Center City, Philadelphia, where notably you can order a customizable sign to be carried to your table along with bottle service. And on Saturday, a video was posted online of a server carrying a sign saying "fuck the Jews" on it, which then, unsurprisingly, sparked a lot of reactions online with people demanding to know how this happened, why the server agreed to it, and why the managers allowed it. And then you had a lot of people wanting a response to the situation from Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports, who is notably Jewish. And respond he did with him posting a video on X saying,
there was a sign yesterday that said the Jews. I've been shaking. I've been so mad for the last 2 hours.
With Dave going on to say that he was working on tracking down everyone involved, that the two waitresses responsible for the table had already been fired, and that he spoke to the people who actually ordered the sign.
I've talked to one of the two guys who did it. He's like, I'm not anti-Semitic. He's basically crying to me. And I'm just like, I don't buy it for a second. Who the would do that sign in my bar? You think I'm just going to sit here? I'm going to make it my mission to put you in the lights. My mission. Kid's crying. I just hung up on his ass. I go, I'm giving you 1 hour. 1 hour. 2 kids go to Temple. Tell me, how do I make this right before I go ape shit? You want to take anti-Semitism classes, you want to do whatever, you make it feel right. I don't need your tears.
Then, in an update later on Sunday, you had Dave posting another video, a bit calmer this time, saying,
my initial reaction was like, I'm going to burn these people to the ground, their families, everything. And it's like, you know what? Maybe that's not the best course of action. Maybe I can use this as a teaching moment.
With him then going on to say that he was going to send them on a tour of Auschwitz in Poland.
But I talked to both the culprits who I know are super involved in it, talked to the families. I'm sending these kids to Auschwitz. They've agreed to go, and they're going to do a tour of the concentration
Okay, Hitler.
camps in Germany.
I'm not calling
and
you
hopefully
out.
learn something.
Yeah, I get the joke.
And maybe, like, their lives aren't ruined and they think twice, and more importantly, other people, like, see, it's not just like words you're throwing around. So to me, that's a fair outcome of this event.
They then also went on to say that the waitresses were fired and that they acted alone. In fact, saying that one of the girls pressured the other into it and neither of them went to discuss it with the manager. With the bar also saying in a statement that they are, quote, saddened, embarrassed, and frustrated by the deplorable actions of a customer and misguided staff, and adding that the staff in question went against their training and that their establishment has a zero-tolerance policy for hate and discrimination. And with that, they close by saying, we deeply apologize for the role we played in allowing hate speech to transpire. This unfortunate incident is the opposite of what we stand for, and we will be doubling down on efforts to prevent such actions in the future. We also saw that the police are investigating the incident, and the 2 students of Temple University who were involved are under investigation, with an unnamed one of them being suspended. And the school promising that anyone else found to be involved, quote, will face strict disciplinary action, including possible expulsion. With the university president saying in the strongest terms possible, let me be clear, anti-Semitism is abhorrent. It is no place at Temple, and acts of hatred and discrimination against any person or persons are not tolerated at this university. But then with all this, we saw not everyone was on board with Dave's decision here. You had many saying that Dave sending these people on an all-expenses-paid trip to Poland is an inadequate punishment. And this is, you had people just kind of criticizing Barstool Sports itself, saying things like, a fuck the Jews sign is obvious hate speech, but you won't get me to look past the fact that Barstool Sports has spent like a decade spreading dumbass middle school SEC-style racism, sexism, transphobia, etc. all over the internet, only to draw the line at anti-Semitism. Great stuff. Which also, I'll say, touching on criticisms like that, and another update posted on X, you had Dave railing against a reporter who had asked him questions along that same line.
She starts like, okay, fine enough, asking questions about the bar, how did it happen, responsibility, blah, blah, blah. And then she shifts. And then she does what a media scumbag does. She's like, well, she pulls a quote out of her ass from, like, I don't even know, a made-up journal, some professor at, like, the Sportocratic University of something. It's like they say that Barstool Sports creates a culture of harassment and that Basically, I'm responsible for this happening at my own bar.
With Portnoy also including footage of him getting heated with the reporter. But that is not where the story ends, because yesterday you had Dave posting another video saying that one of the people who was involved here completely changed his tune and is no longer taking accountability for his actions. Or with Dave saying that he saw a now deleted post from one of the people that completely clashed with his prior attitude when accepting responsibility and deciding to go to Auschwitz. With Dave saying that he called them and that on that call they claimed that he didn't have anything to do with it and that he felt pressured into admitting that he did. And so you had Dave deciding to rescind his offer to send him on a trip to Poland.
Buddy, what are you doing? I'm like trying to make this a teachable moment, throw a lifeline to a kid. He's like, well, I already got suspended from Temple because you got a F the Jews sign at a bar and posted it on social media. What don't you get about that? Maybe if you actually learn a life lesson, maybe if people watch you go to Poland and seem like you're changed, this gets behind you. But now, no, I'm not going to send him now.
Right, and as of now, we don't know what the status is for the other person that Dave offered to send to Poland. You know, what's been interesting as this has been playing out is just the reactions online. Because just generally speaking, people kind of landed in one of three aisles. One, people that loved what Dave said and his kind of idea for how to resolve the situation. Two, people that found the idea of them going to Auschwitz as kind of just not far enough, more of almost like rewarding them with a free trip. And then you had a third group that was saying that Dave Portnoy was actually engaging in cancel culture, that he was going after and trying to ruin the lives of college students. You know, the reactions have been all over the place depending on where you go on the internet. So, you know, as we wait to see how this continues to play out, I've got to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts with this whole mess? But then, next up today, we've got to talk about this airplane.
I don't know how much sending him to Auschwitz would do for him. Because, like, say you didn't like the Jews, right? You would already be looking into stuff that would be against the Jews. You know what was against the Jews? World War II. So, like, they would just find more jokes to come across. Like, don't nothing create more jokes than a direct experience. Like, might create a comedian out of this man. I know, you know, Holocaust was, you know, bad and all. But, like, the past is the past. Jokes are jokes. I mean, even if it's a bad joke, who's really out here trying to defend F the Jews? Like, I can almost guarantee if, like Kanye, for example, he say F the Jews, I can guarantee if he ever said that in person, and you were to ask him, why do you say that? He'd probably be like, well, I don't actually mean that for all the Jews, but I did have this one Jew, or this group of Jews, or a lot of Jews. It'll be a more specific, like, he just saying it maybe to get a rise. It's just the first thing that comes to mind. But, like, don't nobody really mean it. Like unless you have a gun in your hand about to kill somebody, you don't really mean it. Like unless you about to kill somebody, you probably just saying it because you're heated. Like, I feel like I have faith in humanity. I feel like people could change. I feel like some people just do stuff because it would be funny. They want to get some clout. Like, but ain't nothing to. I mean, I feel like sending them to Auschwitz would be a good thing in the sense of it would give a sense of, or like a more modern understanding of, this is what happens when you send people away because they're others. Like, granted, like, I don't know, there's no granted. I mean, a little granted. It's like, the whole World War II thing, World War II was, I don't know, maybe the Jews, I don't know, maybe the Jews did kind of seem like they're invading, and that's kind of what it was. It may be, you know, the Mexicans are invading, but, like, look, that's kind of a direct one-to-one. Maybe the Jews, they weren't really invading, they're just coming and integrating, and it just seemed like, oh, these people are coming to make things better, and not like they're not dealing with all our social nonsense. They're just coming and making the world better, and because they're making the world better, they're getting ahead in the world. And then I don't like it too much, so we're gonna go chop them down a little bit because it kind of seems like they're controlling us now. Because, like, and it's kind of the same with the whole Trump thing and all the south of the border people. Like, it kind of seem like they're just making stuff kind of in their favor now. But, like, I don't know. I'd be losing track of what I'm talking about sometimes. Just finally need like an AI or a partner.
Plane chaos, and specifically I'm talking about the mayhem happening over at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey. Because as you may have heard or even experienced if you had a flight recently, there's been hundreds of delays and cancellations affecting thousands of customers for the past 2 weeks. With us seeing inbound flights Tuesday morning getting delayed by over 2.5 hours on average and up to 5 hours, though on previous days they've seen as high as 10 hours. Right, and there are several reasons for the chaos, but we've now just learned what for many is the most shocking one. Namely, that on Monday, April 28th, sources say that screens in the air traffic control tower, they literally went dark. Like, I mean, air traffic controllers could not see, hear, or talk to the incoming planes reportedly for about 60 to 90 seconds. With reports saying that they were controlling around 15 to 20 flights at the moment everything shut down. And as pilots repeatedly asked, "Approach, are you there?" you could hear the controllers struggling to reestablish contact.
They lost 3 radar scopes went black. They lost all the radios at approach. Just got told that approach lost all their radars. 3 of their 4 radar screens went black, and they have no frequencies.
We lost our radar, and it's not working correctly. And we don't have a radar, so I don't know where you are.
Now, as for what went wrong, you had Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy telling Fox News that controllers had lost the primary communication and that the backup line didn't immediately take over. And this, as other reports said, that a piece of copper wire fried, leading Chuck Schumer to ask,
"Did they ever hear of fiber optics over there at the FAA?"
And now, in the wake of this incident, you have CNN reporting that at least 5 controllers took 45 days of medical leave because the experience was traumatic. With then the FAA confirming this and adding, while we cannot quickly replace them due to this highly specialized profession, we continue to train controllers who will eventually be assigned to this busy airspace. Now with this, I want to note, while 5 people may not sound like a lot, according to United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby, that's over 20% of the controllers at Newark. With him also saying, keep in mind, this particular air traffic control facility has been chronically understaffed for years, and without these controllers, it's now clear, and the FAA tells us that Newark Airport cannot handle the number of planes that are scheduled to operate there in the weeks and months ahead. And this, as he characterized the workers taking leave as them walking off the job, which is something the controllers union did not like. With one source telling CNN, the controllers didn't just walk off the job, they were traumatized. Their equipment failed. It's written in the regulations, if they experience a traumatic event, they can take time off to go see a psychiatrist. The people working that day did that. But whatever your opinion there is a clear thing, and that this only worsens an already dire situation for the FAA. Because you have the union pointing out that the nationwide shortage of controllers, it's nearly the worst it's been in 30 years. With the controllers who remain describing how they're stressed, burnt out, frequently taking overtime. Hell, one Newark employee even told NBC flatly, "It is not safe." With then reporter Tom Costello adding, really an incredible statement, unsolicited. He just said that to me, and separately, "Don't fly into Newark, avoid Newark at all costs." And as if the air traffic control situation wasn't enough, construction work's currently being done on one of the runways, closing it down until mid-June, which then leaves them with only 2 operational runways, but even those aren't guaranteed because severe weather was expected to hit the tri-state area on Tuesday. So then with all this, you had Chuck Schumer taking the opportunity to call out the White House and demand accountability.
Keeping the flying public safe and our national airspace efficient is the responsibility of Donald Trump's FAA. They're failing spectacularly. So today, I am demanding a full Inspector General Office investigation into what happened at Newark so these problems do not get worse or spread to other airports around the nation.
Now with this, I do want to note that Sean Duffy agrees that the system is broken and needs massive reform.
The system that we're using in air traffic control, it's incredibly old. This system is 25, 30 years old. We use floppy disks. We use copper wires.
We're about 3,000 air traffic controllers short right now.
With him saying that back in March, his department bumping Academy student pay by 30%, streamlining the hiring process, and prioritizing applicants who score highest on the entrance exam. And that's in addition to them now announcing plans to give all new graduates from the Academy a $5,000 bonus, give bonuses to controllers willing to work at harder to fill locations, and give bonuses to controllers who work past their retirement age. And then actually, on top of that, his department will announce a plan to modernize the air traffic control system this Thursday. So a big thing there is that Duffy said that the rollout, it might take 3 to 4 years to complete. And then I've got more news for you in just a moment. But first, real talk. I thought that I was on top of my finances, but that's until Rocket Money called me out. I just had so many random subscriptions still charging me, apps I hadn't opened up in months. One that was from a free trial that I swore I canceled, but apparently I didn't. And that is where today's sponsor, Rocket Money, came in clutch. Because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And not only that, they'll actually negotiate your bills for you. So, if you're overpaying, for example, your internet, cable, phone, Rocket Money will deal with customer service so you don't have to. In their dashboard, it helps me see where my money is going, set budgets, and track my spending trends. Also, their goals feature, it made saving feel doable. Like even small amounts have started adding up. So it's not surprising to learn that Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Right? I didn't think I needed help, but Rocket Money helped me clean up my finances fast. So if you're trying to save more, stress less, and stop wasting money, this is the move. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Just go to rocketmoney.com/PDS today. That's rocketmoney.com/PDS. One more time, just for the people in the back, rocketmoney.com/PDS. But then, this is the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency. That is how Senator Chris Murphy has repeatedly described Trump's meme coin, which he says is a conduit for bribery. And today, he actually came on the show to talk to us about his new legislation that he just introduced and what he and many others believe is blatant corruption. I kind of want to jump straight into the topic of the day. And that is that, you have called Trump's meme coin the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency, which is a pretty bold claim. So can you walk us through what's happened? How does it work? Why is it a problem ripe for abuse, right? Because we've seen defenders of Trump coin arguing, it's just the newest wave of marketing. It is a new way to show support, like a political expression. It's the free market doing free market things. And some have even argued if it is all about the money, it's actually transparency in fundraising.
Yeah, I guess it's true. One way you could show support for your mayor is to hand him a check for $10 million. And on your way out, ask him if he might pave your road. That's a way to show support for him, but it's fundamentally corrupt. We don't allow our elected officials to make money through the back door, especially in exchange for favors and for favorable treatment from the federal government. That's exactly what's happening here. So meme coin that Donald Trump has issued, but the stable coin as well, are just mechanisms by which individuals quietly, privately, secretly can send money to Donald Trump, a couple bucks or tens of millions of dollars, and then they can show up at the White House and ask for their favor. And everything we know about Donald Trump tells us that they are going to get much better treatment than folks who are not paying Donald Trump off. The meme coin is worth nothing, right? It has no independent value. But it is clearly a way, as we speak, that people who have interest before the federal government are trying to impact Trump's policy, both the meme coin and the stable coin. A trucking company CEO just announced publicly that they were going to buy.
Kind of look like that one actor. I'm gonna put it up when I edit this, but he looked like that one. He looked like that one actor. I can't even think of what he's in right now. But yeah,
$20 million of Trump coin because they believe that that was the best way for them to get what they want from the Trump administration. The foreign government of the United Arab Emirates just announced that they were going to conduct a sizable chunk of business in Trump coin because they believe that that's the best way to get favorable treatment as a nation from the Trump administration. This has never, ever happened before in the history of the country. We've never allowed for foreign governments, CEOs, corporations to just send money to the president of the United States in order to try to impact policy. It's fundamentally corrupt, and it's kind of unbelievable that it's not, already specifically illegal, but the piece of legislation we're introducing today would make it specifically illegal.
Well, so I guess that's a question. Do you know for certain that Trump is personally profiting from this? And if so, at what level? Or is that kind of impossible to tell from the holdings? Because reports, have noted that 80% of the coin is held by Trump-linked entities. And Trump has said in an interview over the weekend that, he wasn't profiting from anything when asked about the meme coin, that he hasn't even really looked at the profits from crypto. So is there anything concrete there that you know of?
Oh, he's lying. He lies about a lot of stuff. But Donald Trump and his family, right, are the main investors in the company that is issuing the stable coin and the meme coin. So Trump absolutely stands to benefit personally, whether he gets that money now or after he is out of the Oval Office. He benefits personally and financially from the sale of the meme coin and the stable coin. How he makes money off the meme coin is a little complicated, right? He sort of sells portions of the overall allotment, and he gets paid by the exchanges when he sells those allotments. But then every time that there is a transaction of existing coin, he also gets a payment as well. All of those payments are made to a company that Trump and his family have the controlling interest in, and thus it is a very clear mechanism by which individuals can send money directly to Donald Trump.
So, I mean, getting into your bill specifically, what exactly does it do? I mean, is it kind of Trump's already through the door on this, or would it force Trump and his family to give up whatever stake they have? I mean, how exactly would this work for the situation at hand now, as well as moving forward?
Yeah, I do think it's important to acknowledge that what Trump is doing already is illegal. So there's a specific provision of the U.S. Constitution, what's called the Emoluments Clause. Weird word, but it's a pretty simple concept. The President of the United States is not allowed to profit off of his office to use the powers of the presidency in order to enrich himself. That's like exactly what he's doing. One of the things he announced 2 weeks ago was that he's actually going to give private tours of the White House to the top 25 buyers of his crypto coin. I mean, there is no clearer violation of the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause, than that. You can't give access to the White House to induce people to send you money personally. But that's exactly what he's doing. But, there isn't a specific statute right now that says a president or a member of Congress cannot issue a crypto coin and cannot market that coin. In part because all this is pretty new. We haven't regulated the industry writ large, so we haven't had anything specific to say on whether or not it's okay for members of Congress or the president to do it. So this piece of legislation that I'm introducing with Representative Liccardo in the House just sort of simply says that if you're the president or you're a senior member of the administration or you're a member of Congress, you cannot issue a coin, you can't be a owner of a company that issues a coin, and you can't market a coin because you are essentially then using your office in order to try to profit off of this crypto venture.
So, I mean, let's say this gets through, and the question of do you think this actually has a shot of being enacted is, I guess, separate from it, but let's say it does get through. To go back to the question, would this actually strip or force Trump and his family to divest in some way, or is he already through the door?
No, it would be operational going forward, so it wouldn't claw back any profits Trump has already made, but it would require the president and his family to end their investment in this company and in these two coins, the stable coin and the meme coin. The bill would apply, not just to the individual, the member of Congress or the president, but also to their spouse and to their immediate family members. So yeah, this would end the corruption if it passed. And listen, I can't tell you, whether it has a shot. I certainly understand that Republicans are lining up with the president, but I think day by day the public is sort of getting turned on to this scheme. I was kind of amazed that when he rolled it out a few months ago, really nobody was paying attention, but I do now sort of pick up in town halls and my conversations back in Connecticut that my constituents seem to know a lot more about it. And so I think it'll be harder for Republicans to vote against this. Maybe not possible, but I think it'll be harder for them to vote against it as both Republicans and Democrats out there in the country start to figure out that this is, as I said, probably the most massive corruption of the White House in the history of the country.
Well, I guess to that point, especially in regards to more moderate Republicans, do you think that there is as far as maybe a polling cliff edge where there are people that you're able to peel back to actually vote on something like this? Because I think there are a lot of Republicans that either overtly or secretly are scared to back a plan that would do anything negative to Trump or his family.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, obviously his approval ratings have moved very quickly over the past couple weeks. Now his approval ratings are hovering around 40%. I do think that that's the place at which some of his enablers and backers start to think twice about giving him carte blanche. I think when a president's approval ratings, especially this early, when you're normally still in your honeymoon period, or below 40%, that makes it a little bit harder for your party's members to stay in line, especially on the most unpopular parts of the agenda. So I think there will be opportunities for Republicans to break with the tariff policy. There may be an opportunity for them to vote on this bill. And yeah, I think there's a chance that we could win a few over. I think it helps that this bill is more broadly applicable than just the president, right? Where we're saying here, that no member of Congress should do this either. And, that allows somebody to vote for it and say, well, this isn't just about President Trump. It allows a Republican to say, I'm regulating myself, I'm regulating my colleagues. This isn't just about regulating the president. We drafted the bill purposefully that way to make it, more, maybe more palatable for some of Trump's allies.
Are you aware of any of your colleagues in the Senate or the House that are actually holders of Trump coin?
That's a good question. I don't know. That would have to be disclosed on your ethics report. So those are due this spring and this summer. So we may find out pretty soon as to how many members of Congress have the coin. And obviously one of the big questions, is, how much inside information is trading about the coin. If you knew that Trump was about to send out a tweet pushing sale of the coin, which always very quickly but temporarily inflates the value, you would then go out and buy a whole bunch of coin, and then you'd sell it an hour after the tweet. And so, the opportunity for corruption when the president of the United States is pulling the strings on the value of a widely held asset, it's just limitless. So yeah, we want to know who holds it, and we want to see when they bought it. Because if we find out that some members of Congress bought it right before Trump, for instance, sent out the notice that everybody was going to get a tour of the White House, if they bought it, that looks pretty freaking corrupt.
Right. And the last thing I'll ask, and it is connected to this, but it's a little bit of a departure, just regarding the efforts of contesting Trump and the future of the Democratic Party, post-2024, we've seen competing engagement strategies. You have people like, Gavin Newsom starting a podcast, and not exclusively, but bringing on big right-wing and Trump voices to, I'd say, more hear out rather than debate. You have left-leaning leaders like AOC and Bernie Sanders getting a ton of traction with their Fighting Oligarchy tour and populist messaging. You have Pete Buttigieg hopping on podcasts to try to better communicate the moment, communicate Dem messaging, talk about the future. To your credit, we were talking, you came on our show 2.5 years ago, trying out different avenues. As someone that's in the thick of it, what do you make of the efforts? Do you see winning strategies, losing strategies? And, what do you think would be the most effective way for Democrats to recover from the election? Because, and I know I'm going on a little rant here, but I know that, David Hogg recently, the DNC vice chair, trying to shake things up, has argued we can't just be the party that's against Donald Trump. And as bad as Donald Trump's polling is right now, the Dems polling is kind of just really abysmal right now. What do you see as the winning strategies right now?
Yeah, well, there's a lot there, right? But
I try to cram it in right at the end.
I think part of the reason the Democratic approval rating is really low is because Democrats are upset that Democrats aren't fighting hard enough against Trump. It's not necessarily because they're upset that we haven't unveiled a positive message. It's that they think that we're not stopping what Trump is doing. I mean, my basic theory of the case is this: Donald Trump floods the zone every day, and Democrats have to do the same thing. There is sort of a theory of the case out there that Democrats should sort of sit back and we shouldn't sound so alarmist, and we kind of have to reserve our political capital. And if we, are operating on 5-alarm status every single day, it just isn't credible. I don't believe that. I believe that the moment is urgent, and that if you aren't acting like it's urgent every single day, you actually are losing credibility. And I think that we have to be more prolific in the amount of communication we are doing. I was glad that Pete went on that podcast. There was a lot of risk there, but that was really important risk to take. People want to hear us speaking authentically. They want to hear us speaking in a really unfiltered way. They want to hear that we're angry. And that doesn't often come across when we are vetting all of our communications through, consultants or pollsters. If we aren't doing what I'm doing with you right now, right, speaking one-on-one with people in an unscripted way. So I just think we have to act with alarmism and urgency. We have to be doing more communication than we're doing. And, we have to take risks. And if we do that, then I think we can meet the moment.
Senator Murphy, thank you for the time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
And then I've got more news you need to know about in just a moment. But first, I travel to escape drama, not just to start a toxic relationship with my cell provider. Every time I go abroad, it's the same scammy story. A $10 a day roaming plan that go leave at the airport absolutely cut 6% off. To what extent? Well, next up today, we knew that the IRS was getting gutted, but we now know to what extent. Because a little while back, congressional Democrats asked the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration to examine the Trump DOJ cuts to the agency, and it just released its findings, with it stating that through March, the IRS lost about 11% of its total workforce. But the really big thing is when it comes to specific types of workers, because there, the numbers are much, much higher. With most notably, 31% of all its auditors, or some 3,600 people, having reportedly resigned or been fired. And that is still far below what the Trump administration was aiming for, since a recent memo outlined plans to cut as much as 40% of all staff, not just auditors. The Treasury spokesperson even telling CBS News, the Biden administration grew the IRS from 79,431 to 102,309 personnel. Under new leadership, approximately the same number of employees have left the IRS, with a vast majority leaving voluntarily through the deferred resignation program. And then continuing, the rollback of wasteful Biden-era hiring surges and consolidation of critical support functions are vital to improve both efficiency and quality of service. But there, you have critics countering, saying the idea that of all the agencies, the IRS is wasteful or inefficient is ludicrous. Right? And according to the advocacy group Better IRS, every dollar spent on auditing the top 0.1% of earners, it returns about $26 to the federal government, which is why in early 2024, the IRS said it expected to collect over $500 billion more by 2034, thanks to increased funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. But now, thanks to the DOGE cuts, the agency could collect $323 billion less in revenue over the coming decade, according to the Yale Budget Lab, which is what you have critics arguing is exactly the point here. But with the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities recently writing, the haphazard, slapdash nature of the layoffs does not reflect an effort to deliver services more efficiently or perform government functions more effectively. Instead, it appears to be a means of preventing those services or functions from being provided in the first place. And this is you've got Emily DeVito, a former Treasury advisor and now senior advisor on economic policy at Groundwork Collaborative, telling CBS that's exactly what will happen. But they're saying you lose the very staff trained to keep high-end taxpayers and corporate taxpayers in compliance, and adding, you can see some behavioral effects when taxpayers, especially those that really don't want to pay their bills, come to accept there is very little risk to not paying at all or even filing. And so now, with tax filing season over, you have analysts saying we can expect to see more cuts soon. This also is recent polling on the popularity of the DOGE cuts has been less than favorable for the Trump administration, with, for example, the Partnership for Public Services surveying Americans a couple of weeks ago and finding that nearly 2/3 are concerned about the loss of experience and knowledge from the workforce. And that notably including 85% of Democrats, 63% of independents, and even 44% of Republicans. Then, next up today in huge international news, we gotta talk about how for the first time in modern Germany's 76-year history, the candidate for chancellor has failed to win a majority in the first parliamentary vote. And while Friedrich Merz eventually got the votes, he's now starting his term weakened, all while the far-right party that's opposing him seemingly has the backing of the country that's long been Germany's most important ally, the United States of America. You know, with that, it's not just been today that things have been wild, it's been a turbulent few months in German politics. In February, national elections took place 7 months ahead of schedule due to the 2024 collapse of the previous governing coalition, with Merz's center-right Christian Democratic Union, along with its sister party, the CSU, coming out on top with around 29% of the vote. And since then, he's been trying to cobble together a coalition with a center-left Social Democratic Party, which notably led the previous governing coalition before its collapse, and then turned in its worst election performance in more than a century, taking third place with just over 16% of the vote. And then, you know, the far-right anti-immigrant party, Alternative for Germany, or AfD, it came in second with almost 21% of the vote, and that notably after being publicly endorsed by Elon Musk. And a key thing is that since February, its poll numbers have risen as some voters seemingly have taken issue with the CDU working with the SPD. In fact, in April, you saw AfD topping a major poll for the first time ever. And then, with all this, last week you had the country's domestic intelligence agency designating the party as a confirmed right-wing extremist force, meaning that officials can now use informants and other tools such as audio and video recordings to monitor its activities nationwide. And then beyond that, the designation is fueling a long-running debate on whether to ban the AfD under German laws intended to prevent a repeat of the country's Nazi past. Right, and that is members of the Trump administration have now weighed in, with, for example, Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying in a post on X, that's not democracy, it's tyranny in disguise. And adding what is truly extremist is not the popular AfD, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies that the AfD opposes. You know, he wasn't alone. You also had Vice President J.D. Vance sharing that post and echoing the sentiment. But then on the other side, you had the German Foreign Office replying to Rubio saying, this is democracy. This decision is the result of a thorough and independent investigation to protect our Constitution and the rule of law and continuing. It is independent courts that will have the final say. We have learned from our history that right-wing extremism needs to be stopped. And then with all that, this week you had Merz's CDU, CSU union, and the SPD finally getting around to setting aside their differences largely to counter AfD, and they signed a coalition deal, which hypothetically gives Merz 328 votes to back him as chancellor, which is well over the 316 needed in Germany's 630-seat parliament. But what we saw is that when the vote took place this morning, he only ended up with 310, with 9 of the 630 MPs absent, 3 abstaining, and another ballot paper being declared invalid. But that also meant that at least a few members of his own coalition outright voted against it. You know, since the vote is by secret ballot, it could have been anyone. And this is reportedly not everyone in the SPD was happy with the decision to form a coalition, but party officials were adamant that their members were fully committed to it. You know, the party's co-leader, for example, telling MPs that he had not the slightest indication that the SPD was not completely behind Merz, and adding, we can be counted on. Though, of course, with the mess, you had the AfD gleeful, and they called for new elections with the party's leader writing on social media. This demonstrates the weak foundation on which the small coalition between the CDU, CSU, and the SPD is built. But then with that, under Germany's constitution, there's no limit to how many votes can be held. So what we saw is that within a few hours, a second vote had already been lined up, and there, you had Merz winning with 325 votes. But I will say, you know, at the same time, the AfD leader isn't completely wrong. For this new coalition, it appears to be extremely fragile, and Merz, he's reportedly starting with one of the lowest approval ratings of any German leader in the modern era. So, you know, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens, but understand, it feels very much like this situation is primed for some sort of chaos if there's not success almost right out of the gate. Then, next up from that, shifting gears to a different kind of news, let's talk about this bodega owner that's giving kids free food and even cash for good grades. You know, a little human interest piece. But to this is Wally, and he's the manager of Zach's Finest Deli and Grocery in Staten Island. And 2 years ago, he made a bet with one of his regular customers, Zamir, who was 12 at the time, by telling him that if he came in with good grades on his report card, that Wally would give him something from the store for free, with Wally saying, I wanted to help motivate him. And a few days later, Zamir came back with an 88% average and asked for an Oreo milkshake. And with permission from Zamir's parents, Wally shared the video on TikTok, and then a bunch of neighborhood kids started coming in. With Wally explaining, I couldn't just deny the rest of the kids. I started doing it for all the kids in the neighborhood, and he set up a system. Students with an average between 70 and 80%, they get $10 worth of free items, and those with 80% or higher, they get anything they want. And in fact, those with 90% or better, they get $100 and a free t-shirt. With Wally, even rewarding kids are bringing in improved grades and perfect attendance records. And then, again, with their parents' permission, Wally posts these videos of these kids and their rewards on TikTok, with some of his videos then going viral. And so we've seen one of the kids visiting Wally being a 11-year-old Russell Vincent, with him coming in with a 92.67% average, and he picked up a carton of eggs for his mom and a bunch of sweets for himself to celebrate. And Russ there, he's been bringing in his report card since the beginning of the school year, with his mom also chiming in that while he's always been a good student, Wally's encouragement has pushed Russell even further. And adding, I love it, I definitely think it's a good thing that he's doing. And we've also seen other parents echoing that sentiment with, for example, the mom of an 8-year-old saying, my son wasn't doing badly, but he wasn't interested. And with Wally, it makes him want to go hard. And adding, what he's doing is amazing. He's making the kids want to do better, want to go to school, and want to get good grades. Right? At first, Wally was just paying for this project out of his own pocket, but as he's gained traction online, he made a website selling merch to help fund the effort, and eventually a GoFundMe that's raised nearly $30,000, with him saying, now I can accept more kids. It's a very big help. With him adding that he's got no intention of stopping or even slowing down, and he hopes that other people are going to do something similar in their own community. With him saying, I see the progress the kids make. It pushes them toward greatness. It makes me feel really, really happy. So, yeah, just a nice little story of Wally being our BAMF of the day to give you a little breath of air in the otherwise just heavy show. But then, finally today, let's talk about y'all's comments on yesterday's show and some commentary brought to you by beautifulbastard.com, and specifically Project BB28. Because depending on when you're watching this, you only have 24 to 36 hours left. Which if you missed the announcement, BB28, it's all the shirts that you've ever wanted, loved, but never got over at beautifulbastard.com, but just for 28 bucks a pop. Or think of BB28 as the Nordstrom rack to Beautiful Bastards and Nordstrom. Or because tons of people, they love and buy our custom cut and sewn Beautiful Bastard shirts made with our premium high quality cotton spandex. I genuinely believe that it is the best mid-weight shirt out there for under $100. I know I'm not alone there. And while the clothing business, it does very well, people love and buy all sorts of stuff, I also know that the prices that we have at Beautiful Bastard, it prices some people out. And that is why we're testing Project BB28 until Wednesday at midnight. Right, they're different. We're making these shirts with non-Beautiful Bastard blanks, but they're still very soft. They're also, I will say, lighter, which I think is perfect as we're going into summertime. Also, don't worry, it's not Gildan quality. I, want people to come back and buy more. So yeah, if there's a tee that you've ever wanted, but you've been holding off, get it now. Because like I mentioned, at Wednesday at midnight, I'm going to be making all of this private and just kind of look at the data and see if we're ever going to do BB28 again. Is it a seasonal thing? Can it be a permanent sub-brand? Are we ever even going to do it again? But all you got to care about right now is that all of it's available at beautifulbastard.com. Links in the description. Definitely get in on it. But like I said, let's jump into those comments. Right, and in those comments, there was understandably a lot of focus on that Donald Trump interview, especially on the part of due process and is it your job to uphold the Constitution, and him going, I don't know. With Will Atkinson, for example, saying, I don't know is an acceptable answer if you're asked, what do you want for dinner? Not if you're asked, should the president follow the laws that the country was founded upon? What reality even is this anymore? So which I say, Will, this isn't reality. You're in a coma. Please wake up. You also had Cameron Hawkins saying, I'm not a lawyer, is essentially saying, I know what I'm doing is wrong, I just don't know the legal gray area lingo at the moment to brainwash my cult. Also, I'll say in those comments, there was a decent chunk of conversation around the Shiloh Hendricks situation. We all having takes, like imagine harassing a child and then claiming to be the victim and making money from it. We're truly living in a Black Mirror episode. Along with openly saying a 5-year-old is acting like a racial slur and getting support behind it really shows how backward we're walking. And this is you had Matthew saying, it's difficult to express in words how disheartening it is to see how much support the woman in the first story received. As much as some people may want to believe that racism is a part of the past, this, among other things currently happening in our country, goes to show that it is clearly still alive and well. But then finally today, I'll end with these two comments. One, reading 31 seconds in and seeing it's going to be a heavy show with a lot of stories that will tick me off. Hi Phil, how are you doing? And the low-stake chess news was really funny to me as an outsider, but I'd really rather hear about that than another horrific event happening in the world. And so with those, I'll start by saying, I'm kind of okay. Kind of like most everyone else when I look to the state of things and the news and everything. It's draining, it's exhausting. Also, it's my job, so I'm rewarded for being engaged rather than it just being draining, for 99% of the population. But then two, yeah, that's why I decided yesterday to include a story like the chess controversy and scandal. It ends up actually being kind of interesting and helpful for my head to look into news. It's not part of the main drain. Even having this conversation, it's kind of wild to me how the show is flipped. It used to be, oh, we got to include that really serious political story at the end of the show. It's going to drag the show down. Now it's that's front and center, and we have kind of the lighter news at the end. Yeah, more than anything, I think the headline is I'm fine. Sub-headline, I'm still going through a lot of the same things you are. There's part of me that wishes I could flip a switch and I could just not care about anything and be ignorant to many of the things that are happening in the world. But I found just over the last 39 years on this planet, I am not built that way. But that, my friends, is the end of your Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning dive into the news. So of course, I'll see you soon because I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for watching. I love you.
Why is that the basis of what is superior and what's good, y'all? Y'all know where I'm at. We back right now in Harrison, Arkansas, America's most racist town. And guess what? I'm not here by myself. I got my dog with me right here.
Is that America's most racist? yeah.
We out here right.
I'm sorry, I had to speed through Philly D. but this has to be a little bit more
White man country.
common, a little bit more.
Come all my life. We out here right now,
Congress.
Harrison, Arkansas. Let's go meet America's most racist man. And y'all heard Kanye say white lives matter. White people lives matter too, especially white school teachers. Yeah. Hey, let's get it, y'all. Yo, Pooty Feet Charleston. Make America great again.
I'm selling dope again, I'm selling dope again. Selling dope again, I'm selling dope again. I'm selling dope again, I'm selling dope again. I need a new chain, I'm selling dope again. I need a new
Time. Do you think this is a sundown town?
Yep. There is actually a liquor store called Sundowners.
Where at? In Harrison?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I'm going there next.
Yeah. We out here in Harrison County, Texas.
Arkansas.
Harrison, Arkansas.
We at the liquor store.
I'm sorry.
That's what he said. He said Texas.
I sure did. You sure right, ma'am. I said Texas.
What's your favorite liquor so I could buy you some now? What are you talking about? I was thinking about you when I really put this hoodie on. Bro, I'm trying to buy something for my friend. You know Tom Bowie? He always smokes something. I don't know what it is.
I have no
Maddie.
idea.
So what's the significance of your Confederacy?
It's heritage, not hate. A lot of black people part of the Confederate Army as well.
If you could be any race other than black, what race would you be?
White. They the superior race on earth.
So why you feel like white people are?
Show me a black man's army. Show me a black man's navy. Show me a black man's marine. Show me a black man's Navy SEAL. Show me a black man, a Mexican man, an Italian man that done conquered the world like the white man.
But why is that the...
But he don't like the Bloods and the Crips. I know they are like a little unorganized, but like I don't think they're really that unorganized. Like I feel like there's like one nigga who like everybody knows is that nigga, and like he is that nigga, and like it's kind of like all over the world. There's people who don't even speak English that are talking Bloods and Crips, straight up saying Bloods and Crips when they don't even know. Like that's just what their culture is because it's got that deep, and they just know who the guy is. It's possible. It's entirely possible that's not the case. It's a bunch of random guys who are just claiming to be Bloods and Crips, but have there's no like actual organization. But that's possible. But yeah.
Basis of what is superior and what's not superior?
Whoever conquers who, that's who's superior. The inferior people are conquered, not the superior.
What's your stance on like racism?
I think racism is normal. Every race is a racist. Yeah, nothing wrong with racism. Red birds and blue birds don't fly together. Lizards and alligators don't eat together.
I had seen online, you were saying your kids have good hair.
Yeah, black and Mexican.
I think I have some clean dreads. You think this shit cool or not?
That's not good hair.
We in the most racist town right now. How do you feel being here? Like, do you feel like a racist energy, or do you feel like, oh shit, I'm at home for it?
It feels like a normal place in America. Yeah, it feels like anywhere else in America. Yeah, where they got white people. Look like everybody know their place around here. Everybody mind their business.
Do you feel more at home here, or like inside of Nigeria?
Nigerians are ugly. I ain't never seen a handsome Nigerian or a pretty Nigerian woman.
This is Thames. She one of the most famous singers right now.
Yeah, pass.
Damn!
I like light-skinned girls, really. My forehead too big. Yeah, give me a Kardashian. Fuck a Nigerian, nigga.
This is Arya Starr. She a famous Nigerian artist.
Yeah. She might can get it.
Would you ever move there?
I wouldn't even visit Africa. They don't have no Chick-fil-A's out there.
Smash or pass?
Okay.
First one we got Sexy Red.
Pass. She just had an STD according to her baby daddy.
You never caught one?
I ain't had now recently.
It's incredible.
You want me to look at a cartoon character and say, I fuck a cartoon?